Hey everybody, welcome to the Rhett Sever podcast, where everybody has Sever fever and says, oh yeah, it's on at last. All right, so today is my guest.
Kozikowski.
And he plays chess in Washington Square Park, and I met him selling edibles. And he's really cool and really smart and knows a lot of stuff. And so we're going to talk with him today and learn some stuff.
Full disclosure, I don't think the earth is flat.
Okay, yeah. So you were saying that some flat earthers think there's a demonic force making us believe the world's round, or talk about that.
So what I was saying is that I think that people are really, really judgy, right?
Yeah.
There are people that think that the earth is flat, and I find a lot of them to actually be incredibly intelligent.
Yeah.
Right? I don't really think that the earth is flat, but when I listen to their reasons, it kind of pisses me off that people disregard them so much.
Okay.
And when I watch flat earthers argue with those of us in our globular earth community, I actually think that the flat earthers win a lot of the debates, but it's just that their evidence isn't sufficient enough to convince me. But I think they sound smarter than the people that think the earth is round, because of, like, the level of thought they put into it. Now, where we got into it is, I know a lot of people that actually think that the earth is flat, but they don't want to come out of the flat earth closet because they don't want to lose their jobs, right?
Yeah.
And then I said, to a buddy of mine, if you think that the earth is flat and that a group of demonically motivated elites are making the world think the earth is round to divorce us from Jesus, and you're not saying anything about that publicly, then you're in love with Satan, in accordance with your own logic. Because if the power of Christ would compel you to always move towards truth, and you think you have information that the population is being possessed, and you're keeping quiet about it to protect your material investments, then you're on the dark side. Now, that's not an endorsement of Christianity. I also don't have any problems with Christianity, but that's just the need to speak the truth if you actually believe it. And I think that you could tell what people believe by what they act, not by what they say.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, but isn't it possible that he could, believe... You said he's Christian?
He Christian as a motherfucker.
Okay, so can't he be Christian but just think that the demonic people have a power over us? And
yeah, but why wouldn't you say anything? Because if you're Christian, then...
Well, he's scared, because he's scared.
Yeah, but then you don't believe in Christ.
You can believe in Christ and be scared.
No, you can't.
In fact, well, then how come all the Christians I know are very scared people?
Right, because they don't actually believe. What did we say before? Right? You can tell what a person believes by what they do, not by what they say.
So then why do you think they're saying they're Christian?
I think that
That's interesting.
I think that the universe is made of pure consciousness, right?
Okay.
This is going to be a lot, and I'm going to break it down really quick for you in the Rhett Sever podcast family, really fast, and everybody's going to get the Sever fever when they hear me break this down. So basically, the whole universe is made of consciousness, right? Like beyond no comprehension, and it's unified. It's one thing, right? There's no motion in it. But then in order to create a physical experience, it bifurcates. It turns into dualized forces, right? Those dualized forces aren't actually evil. Right? It's not good versus evil. It's just, in a lot of ways, it's left versus right. It's up and down, man and woman. These types of polarities that create tensions in our lives in order that the one consciousness can balance itself and have a physical experience. So when people are trying to apprehend this, if you actually read the Bible, it says that the fall from man was because we ate the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil. It's when people started believing in the divisions between good and evil that we actually fell from paradise, right? And real quick side note, I know this isn't like a Christian podcast, but the fall of man wasn't when Adam bit the apple. It's when he blamed Eve for it, because that was the moment that Adam became a bitch, when he was like, my wife made me do it. And God was like, get the hell out of my kingdom, you little bitch. So basically what happens is, I think that...
It's just sexism.
I mean, in a lot of ways...
They made up stories to justify their sexism.
Or...
End of story, go on.
No, or it could be that it was Adam's absence of masculinity for taking responsibility for his actions, right? Because in order to have an appropriately functioning universe, you need properly balanced masculine and feminine poles, right? So what happens is, a lot of times men are scared to act like men and just take responsibility and say, yes, God, I bit the apple. What are you going to do about it, right? Instead, he cried and blamed his wife, and history unfolds. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think what happens is that in our quest to understand the discomforts of life, understand the pains that we go through, moral systems emerge to offer us direction, right? Like an idea of like, if we perform these ways. So the Christian modality is born of people that want to do right for things, and then it's a system of rules that seems to answer the problems of life and overly simplify the situation. Now, what's really going on is it's these ballads of opposite poles, and evil doesn't exist as a pure force. It exists as what occurs when you fail to see yourself in your opposite and then continue to blame your opposite for your problems, instead of seeing yourself in your opposite and then owning it, and then you could actually generate love, which matches the frequencies of the universe. So what's happening is a lot of times people that are Christians that have good hearts that want to do the right thing are trying to make sense out of life, and they go into these moral systems. But why do they go into these moral systems? Because the Bible is incredibly psychologically accurate in a lot of ways, and it tells really, really wonderful tales about what happens if you fail to confront yourself at the deepest levels, right? Now that, I think, I've said this before, I think the Bible is true. I don't think it's the truth, right? Like, I don't think it's the absolute truth, but I think it contains a coherent structure of the way that reality could unfold. We said this before, like the story of Jesus, the best possible man being tortured for being the best possible man who overcomes death through radical forgiveness. That is absolutely beautiful, right? But then if you look at the other sides of the equation, what is the Luciferian impulse? It is the impulse towards knowledge, towards the knowing of good and evil, towards those distinctions. So if you actually go deep into the Bible, it's a split book. It actually tells a romantic tale of the devil in a lot of ways that unconsciously speaks to people, that draws them towards that. And I think in a lot of ways it possesses the Christian mind, where what they do is through the romanticism of knowledge that comes from the devil, they start to behave satanic in their own false judgy ways, right? They start to judge people under this false type of righteousness, and that actually is because the Luciferian impulse that's buried within the structures of the Bible. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I was just, when you were saying that, I was thinking how, like, right, they just wrote a really nice story so that they would have some content to sell to people, because that's what I realized. Like, there's this documentary called Salesman, and it's about this Bible salesman, how he's just pushing these Bibles on these poor people who don't need it, can't afford it, but he's pushing it anyway, and it's really sad. But it makes you realize, like, yeah, like, if it's all about spirituality, then why do you have to fucking sell me this Bible, bitch? Like,
yeah, but let's be careful though. I really want to be careful.
In terms of what? You don't like materialism. You were saying before.
No, but like, I think materialism is the lowest form of spirituality, right? That there's actually a spectrum that comes from the hierarchy, and that where evil starts to begin is when you believe that the lowest form of spirituality is the only thing that's real. And that in many ways causes incredible evil acts to happen on the planet. But where I want to be careful with the Bible, I think the Bible was written by extraterrestrials. I think if you actually look at the Torah, at the Hebrew Bible, there's incredible prophetic codes in there where when you actually analyze like the cryptic shit in there, it says things like Princess Diana, accident whales.
Well, they stole it from a bunch of old religions. That's why it's so fucking amazing and beautiful. They ripped it off.
It doesn't make it less true. It's just
I'm not
just adjusted for the modern world.
You know, your fake Gucci bag is nice. You know, wouldn't you rather have the real thing? I don't know, whatever. No, it's a bad analogy, but
I totally agree with you. I study a lot of Egyptian mysticism, and I've studied a lot of Kabbalah, and I think that the Bible is the narrative form of Egyptian mysticism and Kabbalah in a lot of ways.
But just whitewashed for the racist, straight white male man society.
Maybe. I mean,
maybe.
First of all, I'm not thoroughly literate in the Bible, right? Like, this is not like this is me on my quest to unconditionally love everybody and understand where everybody's coming from. Right?
Do you think it's a little suspicious that a lot of the Christians we know their leaders are straight white males. That's a little suspicious to me.
Suspicious?
If you're loving everybody, why can't you include some, I don't know, women and people of color?
Yeah, no, I definitely think that, like... I definitely think that it was tilted, right? And I definitely think there's serious problems with it. I mean, look, like... Anybody that
They're
doesn't
hypocrites.
See anybody that doesn't see the problems with Christianity, when you have priests fucking kids...
Oh, God, yes.
I mean, no, it's a serious issue. I think the Vatican's a Luciferian organization, right? I literally think that they're using it as a front to, like, destroy the souls of mankind, right? That being said, I'm...
Because you shouldn't have works of art on your wall that can feed the world.
Right. I mean, exactly.
You're a hypocrite.
Exactly.
That's why this new pope was kind of cool. Like, which is ironic.
I have a problem with the new pope because he said to take the vaccine, so I really haven't.
Well, whatever.
I really have an issue with him.
Oh, that is a perfect segue to what I wanted to ask you about. Because, right, I wanted to ask you, what are your sources that made you base your decisions on, not taking the COVID vaccine because, it kind of uprooted your life?
This is a crazy thing for me. 2 years before the pandemic started, I was doing comedy in the city saying they're about to try to vaccinate the whole planet, right? And I was doing jokes about it, and I was saying aliens are going to land and they're going to tell you they all have measles and things like that, and right? When it happened, when the virus first leaked from the lab, remember when it was a conspiracy theory that the virus leaked from the lab and now everybody knows it leaked from the lab, right? Okay. So when it first happened, I was very, very careful. I was in the glove and the mask and things along those lines. But then I started realizing what was going on. There was just a coherent narrative that was being built. Nobody's allowed to leave your fucking house until you take a shot. Mm-hmm. That's a problem, right? When there was clearly, when Pfizer, who was literally...
It's sus.
Yeah, Pfizer literally lost the biggest criminal lawsuit in the history of the planet when they're being anointed Western civilization's messiahs, right? Johnson & Johnson, who lost a $2 billion lawsuit for knowingly giving children cancer with their baby powders, right? When they're sent to save us all, right? When you see the amount of fuckery that's went on in the name of science, right? The FDA and the CDC receive over half their funding from the companies they regulate. The vaccines have not been safety tested since 1986, when President Reagan made it illegal to sue a vaccine manufacturer if you were injured by a vaccine. 25 cents of every vaccine produced in America goes into a special fund. Crack is whack. So 25 cents of every... A crackhead just came up to us and asked us for change, and I'm pretty sure she was vaccinated because they were giving them $100 to take the shot. So
I didn't know that.
Yeah, no, they were literally giving out $100 at one point to take the shot.
Wow.
Did you take it?
I mean, yes, I have.
All right, so
anyway,
I still love it.
I do background acting, but
no.
I didn't think it was a big deal, but
no.
Anyway.
So basically, what happened with me was when I saw what was going on, every single major media outlet, with the exception of CBS, has at least one board member that floats back and forth between Big Pharma and the media. So when I saw what was going on with the level of corruption in Big Pharma, with the fact that vaccines haven't been safety checked since 1986, when President Reagan made it illegal to sue a vaccine manufacturer if you were injured by a vaccine, and then the law of the land became 25 cents out of every vaccine sold in America goes into a fund appropriated by the United States government, that if you're injured by a vaccine, you have to sue them in a place called the Court of Special Masters. And when you receive your settlement, there's a gag order on why you got the money. So when people tell you the science is crystal clear, there's a fucking gag order on the science. And that means that the pharmaceutical companies are working in conjunction with the FDA, who's working in conjunction with the government, in order to cover up scientific data, which is the operational definition of a conspiracy. Right?
Yeah.
So then when I saw the planet going in a direction where all of a sudden we were being locked indoors until we agreed to preemptive medicine. Now, all medical procedures have a risk of harm, right? That's just basic logic, right? When you're being locked indoors until you are being asked to engage in a medical experiment before you're allowed to leave your fucking house, that is a violation of the Hippocratic Oath and a violation of the Nuremberg Code. Now, there's an issue. I call this the concentration camp of convenience. Certainly, we're not on a par with 1940s Nazi Germany. But the level of propaganda that was behind the notion that an experimental vaccine is safe and effective was enough to convince me that there was something very serious to be paid attention to, and that we had an obligation to stand up to the military-industrial pharmaceutical complex without any hesitation. Because then what starts to happen, it's not just the medical damage that could happen to engaging in these treatments when they're engaging in psychological warfare against the population to convince you that Pfizer loves you. Yeah. That's a serious problem. And now, when they tell you that this vaccine does not alter your DNA, right? They can say that, and here's the reason they could say that. Because there's an infinite amount of facts that can be paid attention to. That's true, right? There's an infinite amount of facts in the universe, right? The scientific method does not determine what facts you pay attention to. It only determines how you analyze the facts that you paid attention to. So if you are a pharmaceutical company, the CDC, the FDA, the World Health Organization, and finance determines the facts that you pay attention to, the science will say whatever the fuck you want it to say, and it will say it clearly. So when they say that this shot does not alter your DNA, that's in accordance with something that's called the central dogma in science. The central dogma states that DNA moves in a directional fashion from nucleus on outwards, right? It's like nucleus to RNA to mRNA or something like that. I don't want to get the procedural mechanisms wrong, because what people do is they take your humanity and the fact that everything you say could be flawed, and they find one detail off in what you said and use it to discredit you. Right. So what I'm saying is that this is true. The central dogma suggests that DNA moves in a directional fashion outward from the nucleus and not in the reverse way. Stem cell research actually disproved that theory. And we have stem cell research now that's functioning outside of the central dogma. The problem is that the central dogma is what they're using to say that this shot does not affect your DNA. So it's not going to turn your brown eyes green, right? It's not going to make a white man a black man, right? Okay. But the notion that it's not, by training your DNA to produce spike proteins, what that's doing is altering your DNA to produce fucking spike proteins. So when you start to have an experimental treatment on the human population to alter their genetics to produce fucking spike proteins, by the way, 5 years before this, the World Health Organization was giving out mRNA studies on rats, and all the rats were dropping dead and getting autoimmune disorders, and they had to stop the studies. When you have an emergency authorization vaccine, you're allowed to skip or dramatically hasten the animal studies. So there was a meme going around of two rats smoking a cigarette, and the one rat said to the other rats, "Hey, did you take the shot?" And the other rat said, "No, I'm waiting for the human trials to be over." Right? Now, that's not necessarily the problem. In the name of science, maybe people could say, "Listen, I'm so worried about this, I want to lend myself to science." The problem is when the administrations are in a unilateral narrative telling you that an experimental shot's safe and effective. It's clearly bullshit, and there's an agenda. Now, I don't know what the agenda is. Right? If you ask me, I think there's extraterrestrials involved. I think the extraterrestrials are wiring human genetics in some way. I can never prove that, and I would not base my decision on something so abstract. What I'm saying is I have enough information to suggest that there is systemic and organized corruption behind this, and there's propaganda being waged in order to guarantee that humanity falls in line with this. That is, close the conversation. It's time to fight back. That was my thinking.
Okay, so do you think it could simply just be like when you compared it to the military-industrial complex, the medical-industrial complex, which I was thinking the same thing also recently, where, I was like, getting my vaccine, and, I see all this stuff, all these people around, and it's like, damn, they really got their new thing going here. And then I thought of, right, it's just the medical industrial complex, just like military. Because if we can't, if we're evolving away from military, we need a new thing, and it's this shit. So do you think it's just simply they needed a new thing to get to basically pilfer the tax billions and get it in their pockets in a legit way, like a legit laundering system?
I'm going to answer the question in kind of a circular manner, because I think, and it's with a poem that I wrote. And this poem was when I was with my kid's mother, and she was falling in line with the whole mishigas that was going on. and she was Jewish and she was Zooming on Shabbat. And I was trying to highlight the problems with doing that to her. I think this applies to humanity as a whole, but the poem that I'm going to recite is specifically tempered to the Jews, but I think it'll stretch out. So I said, put a froggy in the water, little froggy's going to hop, but if you slowly turn it up, then little Kermit's going to pop. Who needs synagogue? Jews are zooming on Shabbat, and they think it's their idea. How could it be more clear? Get rid of Judaism. The true religion is fear. They tried it in the Holocaust to gash through the vents. Then they learned their lesson, so first they'll get your consent. Right? So the tyranny of consent, the concentration camp of convenience. Stay inside and shut the fuck up, or you will not have a job. You will not have any money. And if you don't let us alter your biology in whatever way we say is safe and effective, you will be excluded from society. So basically what happened is there's a ruling class.
It was the litmus test.
Yes, and there's a ruling class elite that has taken over the pharmaceutical industries and the governments. And of course there's moving parts to this. Of course there are parts of the government and the pharmaceutical companies that are still intact. I think most people on the ground level of the pharmaceutical companies are just doing their job and they just want to be good people. But there's a larger agenda where they just got access to the bodies of all humanity. Right? And I want everybody, listen, fact check me, people. Don't trust the fact checkers online. Fact check me right now. Look this up. Right before the pandemic started, Microsoft filed for a patent under 060606 for a microchip to be inserted into your body that can mine for cryptocurrency. So go look that up before you call me a crackpot. And I'm going to tell you this right now. I didn't get that off tinfoilhat.com. That was research from the International Patent Office. So go look it up. And I'm sure if you need comfort in your psyche, you'll find a way to disregard it. But this is going on. Before the pandemic started, Jeff Bezos bought Whole Foods. Bill Gates is now the biggest owner of farmland in the world. This is all on the tails of humanity being locked indoors until we trusted Pfizer.
Medical industrial complex. Because you were still saying then it's a litmus test, stay in your house, all that stuff. But still, that doesn't, bring us to the reason why. Do you think it's mainly the money?
I want to be clear about
getting everybody's body. Sorry.
Vaccine side effect.
Shut up. No, this is. That's why I'm trying to take these mushrooms. Oh, let me get back to the chip. Were you saying that the chip could be in the vaccine?
No.
Okay.
No.
Thank you.
Let me be clear. They don't need to track everything you do. Your cell phone does that for them.
Yeah.
There's a great meme out. It was like a woman in the 1950s that was like, I can't talk on the phone. The government's tracking me. And there was a woman in 2020 that said, hey, wiretap, what's my recipe for pancakes? So now we're at a point where everybody knows that Alexa's listening to them. Everybody knows their cell phone's listening to them. Nobody gives a fuck because it's too convenient.
Yeah.
And it's actually upgraded. It's not just convenient.
We're stuck to the matrix.
You can't function in society without a phone anymore.
Yeah.
So I don't think that it's a tracking device. Quite frankly, I don't know what's going on with the shot. I know there's something scary going on, but there's no way I can figure it out. I can make guesses, but those guesses will sound stupid. Even if I believe them, I say like belief. There's a belief, then there's a theory, then there's knowledge, right? Mm-hmm. A belief is like something where it's like maybe you could like pragmatize, and once it's theoretical, you have a moral obligation to act on it. I don't need to know what's going on with the shot, right? In order to know there's something fucked going on with the shot, because it didn't make any sense at all.
Yeah.
Especially when you saw Fauci's response. I said this all the time. If Fauci came out and said, listen, there's a new virus. He didn't even have to say it came from a lab. That could scare the shit out of people, right? He could have just said, there's a new disease out. It's a respiratory infection. We have no medical treatment for it at this time. Scientific evidence has shown that respiratory infections are drastically helped by vitamin D3, vitamin C, and zinc. So we're advising everybody to take these add these supplements to their diets because there are absolutely no side effects to them. And we will be sending out 50-cent a pill hydrochloroquine to every house in the country in case you get severe symptoms. By the way, 50-cent hydrochloroquine is a lot cheaper than $1,200 stimulus packages. So that's what when they didn't have that level of calm and also speak of the multiple ways that there were to deal with this disease other than going through big pharma, it was very clear that they were not concerned with human life, right? Yeah. So what's happening with the shot, I don't know. What I know is it's not necessarily about the money, because the ruling class elites, it's not that they're rich, they have control over the money supply, right? The people at Pfizer are working with the people at the Federal Reserve. They print the fucking money out of thin air, right? Literally. I mean, that's just read The Creature from Jekyll Island. It's a 600-page book. I read it from cover to cover. It'll scare the shit out of you, and you know, maybe you'll call him a crackpot, or maybe you'll wake the fuck up. But money is like sprinkles on the ice cream. It's always about deepening control. Nobody wants money. You don't want money. I don't want money. Nobody wants money. We want power and we want freedom, right? We want to be able to move through the world, right? So the money is an extension of these deeper desires. The deeper desires do have a class system, caste-like function to them, where the ruling class just needs to maintain the status quo because things are going great. The middle class wants what the ruling class has, and the lower class is just begging for everything to settle the fuck down, right? So our natural desires for money are colored by the amount of which we have. When you're in the ruling class, it's not more money. You have enough money for 12 lifetimes, and your children have enough money for 12 lifetimes. It's about the maintenance of the status quo. So whatever the fuck is going on with the shot is about the maintenance of the status quo, but the maintenance of the status quo is not enough. It's a deepening of control at some level. So for example, listen, go and buy some rat poison. You'll see that fluoride's in it, right? Now, why is there fluoride in the water? Our government is expecting us to believe that it's to take care of our teeth. Really. When you sip fluoride, when you sip water, it doesn't even touch your fucking teeth normally. But let's talk about this. We are in the middle of nuclear threat, a cancer epidemic, an obesity epidemic, a starvation epidemic, plagues of conscience that the world has never seen. And our government is concerned about tooth decay? So much to infiltrate the water supply with fluoride?
Wait, do you think it's just killing germs, or?
No, I think that basically what happens is, if you look at what happens with fluoride, fluoride's a neurotoxin. If you look at what's going on in the food supply, the seed oils lower testosterone, raise cortisol, and are incredibly inflammatory. If you look at the things that are happening,
so it's about weakening the masses to stay in control.
Because, okay. And listen, we don't need to go and Google this, right? I say
well, yeah, you're not going to find it on Google in a mainstream way because, of course, the top has edit control.
Right. And let's talk about this. Critical thinking is not checking your sources. Critical thinking is actually thinking about what's going on. All critical thought has to start from first principles. The first principle of everything is that all thought emerges from consciousness. All desire emerges from consciousness. What I'm saying is psychologically appropriate for the ruling class. And you can tell that it's being mobilized because they have all the money in the goddamn world and they're not philanthropic about it. If they were philanthropic about it, we wouldn't have the problems that we're facing. So
they're sociopaths.
Right. And
that's what got them to the top.
And keep in mind, morals have a direction, right? So what I say is there's moral behavior, then there's amoral behavior, then there's immoral behavior. So most people, in order to get money, will take on amoral behavior. Most people start out moral. They want to be good to people, right? But then you're 21 years old, you're tired of being broke, you take a job in corporate. That's amoral. It doesn't make you a bad person, right? But now when you've taken the amoral behavior, see, you've slid down that lattice a little bit. You went from moral behavior to amoral, where you're not concerned with morals, you just want your money, right? No one's mad at you for that. But now you got to do things at work that might be a little immoral. Now soon what happens is your moral structure changes as a person. Your satisfaction impulses are altered. So you and I are going to be satisfied by love. A guy that could invade Iraq for oil and kill hundreds of thousands of people for oil, he's not satisfied by oil and money. He's satisfied by fucking blood. Right?
Well, they see the people there as subhuman, and that's why they can do what they do, because they don't see them as human, as equal.
You're a good guy. I know you. I'm sure there have been times you told people off and it felt really good, though. Right? There's times that... Can you imagine what it is for a sociopath to kill hundreds of thousands of people? It's not a neutral thing. Can you imagine? Sit with that for a second. What is it to take the lives of hundreds of thousands of people against their will and go to sleep at night.
Especially when it satisfies your whole plan to create the status quo of your...
So what I'm saying is that the death was not collateral damage. Psychologically speaking, the death is the function and the money is the collateral gain.
Okay.
And that's the only way to psychologically make sense of this. And the reason that people don't want to confront that is because they don't want to confront their inner sociopath that's actually capable of doing things like that if they were put into positions of power and pressured in the right way. They don't want to acknowledge that that part of them exists. So what they do is they turn a blind eye, they get drunk, they eat seed oils and fried fucking chicken, they take pharmaceutical drugs to shut off the parts of their brain that would actually feel something and realize what's happening. And it's scary because not only do you have to confront that in yourself.
Just high five.
Let's get the click on camera. So we've heard the term people hide behind their own shadows, right? People are scared of their own shadows. You really need to read Carl Jung to know what that means, right? Mm-hmm. Every human being has a dark side that they try to run from. Yeah. If you confront your dark side, learn to control it and master it, you can actually be an effective human being. And they don't want that to happen. That's why they try to drug the dark side out of you. Everybody watching this right now, if you think I'm a crackpot and you think I'm insane, go on YouTube, type in 1984 original movie. That movie,
with John Hurt?
Yeah, that movie was made, I don't know who was in it, but that
released in 1984.
Yeah, it was like early 1980s. No, I'm sorry.
It's in the Criterion Collection. I'm a film freak. I know this.
I actually look up Brave New World. It's Brave New World. I'm saying look up. So now the movie Brave New World is intense, right? It's 3 hours long. I want you to keep something in mind. If you actually take the challenge, and if you can actually sit through the movie. Now, what you're going to do, people, is you're going to tell yourself it's not worth your time and it's just some crackpot. And I'm going to tell you you're hiding from reality. That book was written in 1932 before Big Pharma reared its
by Aldous Huxley.
Yeah. Before Big Pharma reared its ugly head into everybody's life, before big media existed, before birth control was out. In 1932, they predicted the dawning of an atheistic civilization that would never have to confront emotions because of a pharmaceutical takeover of the planet, where propaganda was dispelled on big screens, and the nuclear family was destroyed, and God was dead. That was in 1932. When Aldous Huxley was asked, how long is this going to take to happen? He said about 600 years. Then in the 1960s, they said, how long? He said, I'm sorry, I was dramatically wrong. It was only going to take about 100.
Wow. Because
of the evolution of the complex. So what's happening right now is between cigarettes and liquor and the legalization of marijuana, no offense, and the pharmaceutical company, people don't have to feel anything anymore. They get to pretend like it's not going on, and they're being chemically altered to do so. Can you imagine training the genes of humanity to respond to spike proteins for a disease that can be treated with a fucking neti pot and ginger, and in serious cases hydrochloroquine? There was a homeopathic medicine called gelsemium. And by the way, these statements have not been evaluated by the FDA. There's a homeopathic medication called gelsemium that is effective against this. If you
against what? Sorry.
Against COVID.
Okay.
So what we just had was everybody was locked indoors till they trusted their genes to the experimental love of Anthony Fauci and fucking Pfizer, when there were a million ways to cope with this disorder. Yeah. That's what humanity's becoming, a genetically altered fucking mess. And you think your food, the food you eat, doesn't alter your genes? Do you know how deep gene expression goes? The genes that turn on and off are regulated by the stress in your body. If the food you're eating is stressing your body out, the appropriate genes are not going to turn on. And you're going to
So basically, we don't know the long-term effects of this GMO shit.
No, I think we do. It's a fucking biological holocaust.
So you're saying just people's lives will be shorter, or what?
Again, let's critically think about this. Let's not check our sources. Let's just think about this for a second. Right? Now, human beings evolved eating certain types of food. Human beings' bodies have long-term genomic memory that's been passed on for centuries. This is the first generation that's eating food that's been genetically altered. Our bodies have to adapt. in order to process this. And anyone that tells you this is bullshit does not have scientific data to back it up, because you would need long-term studies that are not funded by Monsanto.
And the time hasn't passed for those studies to even have happened.
Right.
So we don't know what's going to happen.
Our food supply is a goddamn experiment on humanity.
Yeah.
And if that doesn't scare the shit out of you, just watch a Twilight Zone episode where the extraterrestrials come. Because this is... The notion that there's extraterrestrials involved in this shouldn't be that startling anymore, being that it's been on CNN, Fox News, MSNBC. It was all started to be released while everybody was locked in their house. That extraterrestrials were landing and shutting off the nuclear weapons. All right? You better fit Wolf Blitzer for a tinfoil hat, because what used to be conspiracy is now just a fact. Period. End of discussion. You really think that with the level of genomic alteration that's been happening, that there's not a higher intelligence behind this? Doesn't mean it's the highest intelligence, but a higher intelligence behind this? And even if you don't think that, isn't it worth considering? Because if I'm right and people are ignoring this, the consequences are profound. It's like having a train coming to crash into somebody and telling them there's a train coming and they're calling you a conspiracy theorist. And you're like, no, there's a train coming to hit you. Right?
Yeah.
Now, the question that people always ask me is, okay, you're right. It's obvious that there's something going on. Then what do we do? The answer is simple. Reality is rooted in consciousness. There's an archetypal structure to behavior. If you follow your instincts and follow your core, and you're prepared to take the hell that is cast upon you for that, because where the New Age philosophers get it wrong is when you follow your bliss and you follow your excitement, it normally gets you in a lot of trouble. You have to keep following it, even after it gets you in trouble. And the following of your instinct, following of your heart, following of love will align you with universal principles that are strong enough to overthrow the elite. Nothing is stronger than an idea whose time has come. Nothing. All the military, all the guns in the world, the media, the vaccines, nothing can take out a notion whose time has finally come. And we don't need the masses to believe it. We need enough of people willing to live off the principles of their soul in order to say, no, I will not comply. And this kind of brings us back to full circle to the beginning of the conversation when I said, when I talk to flat earthers who don't want to go public because they don't want to lose their job, I don't think they actually believe the earth is flat. And I think they actually don't believe the shit that they're saying. I think what's happening is it's kind of a shadow paradigm of saying, be prepared for the fact that we've been lied to, right? The government is lying to us continuously. They're doing it. So they're taking the most radical presuppositions imaginable and committing to them in order to bend their mind away from the herd mentality. And I deeply respect that. I think that they're taking that very noble psychological endeavor and projecting it onto something that, to me, seems off. But when I listen to their reasoning, I'm talking really smart people believe this shit.
Yeah.
And when I listen to their reasoning, I could see why they would believe it. Right? Now, I have my reasons for not believing it, right? And this isn't a flat earth podcast, but I bring this up specifically to say, when you learn to believe in something, you have to stand behind it. Mm-hmm. You cannot move on it, because if you move on it, look, I don't want to say that the world we're living in resembles Nazi Germany, because those were horrible times, and it's not that. The world that we're living in right now,
just the light version.
Yeah, well, it's the tyranny of consent. It's the tyranny of convenience, and basically what it is it's a world where people are only smart enough to do the jobs they're given, and they get fat enough to not comply, and eventually they just waste into nothing, and
nothing changes.
They're born into a life where they never really live, and there's a very good chance that if we don't wake up, the robots will control humanity instead of humanity controlling the robots. Yeah. Right? That's what the Age of Aquarius is about. If you actually look at the Age of Aquarius, it's about technology. It's about and what's going to happen. And I do believe this.
And nuance, and not everything being either or black and white.
Well, what I think is going to happen in this Age of Aquarius is I think nuance is really important. Yeah. I think nuance could save us. But I do think there's a black and white element to it, where it's either humanity is going to control the technology, or the technology is going to control humanity. Mm-hmm. And look, if technology controls humanity, you're going to get turned into a robot. You get turned into a fucking cyborg.
I know, that's interesting. I recently had the thought, because I always would be like, nothing's black and white. Everything is more nuanced and in between. But then I realized, well, no. Saying nothing is black and white is another form of black and whiteness. So to be nuanced and to include everything, it doesn't mean... it means some things are still black and white, right? But most things are just more gray and nuanced and not like today where everybody's either or bullshit, you know. Because that was the age of Pisces, either or bullshit. And age of Aquarius is more getting into the gray nuance.
It's the integration of all things, the understanding that the yin yang is more accurate than say the cross of Christ, right? And that's why the Asian cultures are starting to dominate. But I do think that there's something very telling about the notion of the story of Christ, and I think that in order to preserve because look, this is the way that I look at it, right? The liberal factions and like the true liberalism, true progressiveness is to say, hey, this is the way that we need to go. We need to be a more accepting people. We need to be a more tolerant people. We need to integrate all people, right? But then there are things about the way that America was run that were really amazing, right? And that's what the conservatives are there for. So there needs to be a conversation between progressives and conservatives where the progressives are like, this is what we need to do. And the conservatives are supposed to be like, yeah, but let's not get rid of this, right? Yeah. So it's like, okay, we need to be tolerant and respect everybody's feelings, but we can't get rid of free speech. Right?
Yeah, we can progress with still conserving the good things.
Right. So the idea is like, yes, for a long time, society was tilted towards white straight men. That's true, right? I don't think it's as bad as they're making it out to be, and I don't think that all white men are the devil, because what we have happening nowadays as a consequence is all forms of healthy masculinity are being viewed as toxic. And even to say the term masculinity, you kind of get snubbed a little bit. Meanwhile, you need aggressive energy. You need to stand up for things, right? You need that. Like there are so many things that we need to maintain while we integrate the feminine, right? And I would.
This is where the nuance comes in, of course.
I would prefer. Reality is a constant bout between dualities. And one side of duality normally does come up on top, right? So you see that in our political cycles, right? There's a conversation in America between conservative values and progressive values, right? And sometimes the conservative values win, sometimes progressive values win. When you study Hegel and the master-slave dialectic, you see that there are areas where it's like when people fail to recognize the nuance in their own being and share it with other beings, a type of life and death struggle does emerge. And what happens is one side does win temporarily and come up. So what I'm saying is I don't necessarily even mind a type of matriarchal society. The problem is that the feminine runs deeper than the masculine. It's the depth.
Why can't it just be equal?
Equal does not mean the same.
Well, no. What do you mean by the same?
So for example, if I look at feminine, I think feminine intelligence is the intuitive type of emotional things, and masculine intelligence is like the logical logos type of factors. And I think that masculine intelligence is very much rooted in the truth, in telling the hard truth, and feminine consciousness is really rooted in creativity, right? And that what you want to do is you want to awaken both these principles within you, right? So you could have creative functions that are more circular. I think that circular truths are actually more truth than the direct masculine truth. So I think that the feminine sits a little closer to the state of natural reality, right? Because the feminine is intuitive and the human mind can't process everything, so you need intuition to guard.
So you need an equal balance, you're saying?
You need a balance, but the thing is that there's going to be, every society and every person is going to have a slight tilt in one direction. Because think about this, if there is one unified consciousness, right? The physical experience is rooted in some sort of gradation and some sort of polarity, because you have this perfectly equal structure that's only one thing, that's only one form of existence, right? And yeah, you have this perfectly type of consciousness that's only one thing. So it's not even equal because there's only one thing. There's no place for it to equal out, because for equality you would need two things, right? So you have this type of thing. In order to create a separate experience, you need to integrate the things that are not. There's no polarity there. There's no gradation there, right? So then what happens is in the physical form, polarity and gradation emerge. Now what we're going for is a balance, right? But every individual and every society is going to be tilted in one way or another. What you want is like a 51-49 split. And basically what you want is say for example, we'll use politics, right?
Well, that's what we have. There's 51% women, 49 men.
Right. So basically, but like we'll use politics, right? Because it's a little easier. Okay. What you would want is a person that's, say, 51% progressive and 49% conservative talking to a person that's 51% conservative and 49% progressive with the humble understanding that because of my predisposition that has its place, I'm still going to miss things, and I want you to inform the things that I'm missing, and I'll inform the things you're missing, so we could build a system. So it's like instead of partisan politics, we could have a collaboration of talents, right? Obviously, we don't have that. And the reason we don't have that is because human beings become addicted to the poles of their own minds, where instead of realizing, and these are the problems that I see with the modern progressive movements, right? I was really progressive 10 years ago, right? I was all for gay rights. I was, Black Lives Matter. I was marching for Black Lives Matter before it was a thing. I remember there was a chick with a dick sitting on my lap in the middle of a meditation circle, and everybody felt uncomfortable, and I didn't even realize that it was weird, right? And it was like, this is totally fine. But then we start to get into these situations now where it's getting pushed down your throat. And I'll give you an example of this. I'm organic, vegan, gluten-free, and all those things. When I go places, I understand that people are not going to cater to me, right? I'm happy to call people by whatever pronoun they want, but I think that they should be sensitive to the fact that people are adjusting. Right.
Basically, to wrap that up, it's basically people fight fire with fire, and you can't do that.
Maybe you can under certain circumstances, but what you should be always trying to do is contain the fire so it nourishes. So if you see somebody that's very intense and very out of control, what you should be trying to do is just help contain them, to respect their passions. If it's some totally, let me give you an example. We'll take a total crazy thing, right? And please leave everything I'm about to say in this, because I don't want this taken out of context.
Okay.
Take a fucking KKK member, right? Now, obviously, they're insane. Obviously, there's a problem with it, right? Obviously, this has no place in society, and the KKK should be fucking illegal, right? Obviously, right? But what you should say, why is this person that emanates from creation seeing things in this way? And then what we need to see, and I think this would save a lot of problems, is that races are different, and that needs to be respected. You don't want a homogeneity of races. You want to understand this is a black dude that I'm talking to, and they have insights to give me, and that black dude should be wanting to talk to the white dude. Now, we're people above race first, right? That's really important. But Martin Luther King said that if the world became gray, we would lose identity, right? We want the nuance of character. So even in the most pathological structures, what we should be doing is finding the seeds of wisdom, integrating them, and then making a judgment. The KKK member is too far gone and should probably be excluded from society, right? But in ourselves, we can have a noble forgiveness with an understanding of this is the seed of truth that is causing the perversion within them. Let me learn from that and then exclude them. That type of thing. Now, the overwhelming majority of people are not going to be that pathological. So say you sit down with a person, I try to be as balanced as possible on all things. I try, and that's born of unconditional love, right? If I unconditionally love everybody, I have to love gay people, straight people, conservatives, liberals, Hitler and Jesus, all of them I need to love. Now the thing is, I think Hitler should have had a bullet in his head. I think Jesus should be praised, right? And there's not as like a...
You don't have to love people's actions, you can love them, right?
No, but I think we need to, in order to fully love, right, to have the experience of real love, that's not just lip service, you not only need to love the person, you need to understand the genesis of their actions and see the innocence behind it. Why were they so motivated towards these things? What were they saying that was true, that actually drove an emanation of creation that insane, right? So you could have cogent judgments about the insanity of a person while still understanding that they're a wounded fucking child that was driven mad and then took on the veil of evil in order to satisfy the human need for power.
Right. It's because people don't get the profoundness of, they just look at things on the surface and it's like, well, no, why would you love a Nazi? Well, no. You're loving the Nazi, so then hopefully they stop being a Nazi. You're not loving the Nazi's actions. You're loving the person, so they stop being an evil asshole.
And not only one.
but they can't get past the surface level of, well, no, you can't love an evil person. Well, no, you should, so they stop being evil.
No,
that's what they don't get.
Maybe they'll stop being evil, but a lot of people are not going to stop being evil. And even if you need to fucking like kill a Nazi, you'll be in better shape if you love them and understand them, because then they won't be able to control your mind in the same way. Because what happens is anger, resentment, hatred, fear.
Well, then you don't have to lower yourself and kill them, right?
And the thing is, well, no, man, listen, dude, a Nazi's coming to like kill somebody. You might need to kill them.
Well, right.
Like
anyway,
no, this is like philosophy 101.
No, I get.
I'm like a vegan, right? Like I was a hardcore pacifist for years. But then the question was posed to me: if there's somebody with a nuclear bomb in Times Square, and the only way to stop them from detonating it is to shoot them in the head, you have to shoot them in the head. So there are circumstances that you could do it. What I'm saying is that if you actually unconditionally love all beings and understand the innocence of their actions, you will not be as disturbed by their actions, and you'll be able to act more effectively and make judgments about it. So you'll be able to tell, like, this person's a little lost right now, this person's totally gone, and this person needs to be removed from society, right?
No, yeah, that was an interesting thing you said in the beginning, where people should use the little bit of sociopath in them to understand the enemy, so then you can get into their psychology, right? Like the whole Silence of the Lambs thing. Get inside the head of the serial killer so you can catch the serial killer. It's not about, having empathy for the evil person. It's understanding them so then you can then stop them.
Right.
And that's kind of like the movie M with Fritz Lang. They think they're being, sympathetic towards the child molester. It's you're trying to understand them so you can then try to stop the child molesters.
I didn't see the movie.
Well, I'm just saying, like, people can't get past this whole idea of, oh, you shouldn't have empathy for evil people. It's like, that's not the point. The point is trying to stop it. But anyway.
But let's be careful, because I do think there's a pedophilia ring going on, right?
Well, okay.
No, and I do think they're dumping money into it to normalize it.
I know, I just laugh because we don't have time for a whole nother subject, but it's just, right, of course there's all this crazy stuff happening. The point is I think the universe created negativity as a catalyst for evolution. And also, I think what you said, I just realized was interesting, is because I was, over here with the equality thing, but then you were right, you do need a little bit of a imbalance as a catalyst for evolution.
Right, and then what we want is our imbalances to work together.
Because if you're saying if we had a perfect 50-50, then there's no catalyst for evolution,
and there's
right?
No tension, and there's no capacity for harmony.
Because you need a little bit of, like, roughness,
right?
Well,
Think about a guitar.
To grow.
Think about a guitar. Think about a piano. Think about, like, string instruments, right? Think about any musical instrument. They all have tension within them, or there's some sort of colliding of force.
And friction.
Right. And then what you get in a beautiful symphony is when those frictions work together. So my sense, my sense talking to you is that you're a little more on the progressive spectrum than I am, right?
Yeah.
I was part of the anti-mandate movement, right, which was a very conservative movement. I was super liberal relative to most of the people that I was working with, like super liberal, right? But now the thing is, like, when you and I talk, we have wonderful conversations, because, like, I appreciate when you say things that are really progressive, because then I have to think about them and then integrate them, and then another piece of another miracle happens, right? I think that the progressive movement is being hijacked by the elites right now to bring about a communist dictatorship of convenience, right? So normally when I hear progressive types,
because most people are progressive, I think.
No, I mean, and we should be.
They want the majority heard.
No, and the thing is that capitalism inherently disenfranchises people, and you have to take care of the disenfranchised if you want to have a close to perfect system, right? So that's true. Now, what's going on is that, but, like, so when we talk, right? Like, I really like you. Like, it's fun for me to talk to you. So, like, when you say something that sounds a little too progressive to me for a second, because I just love you, I'll jerk a little bit. Like, something will happen, right? Like, so sometimes you'll say things about, like, straight white men, right? And, like, I've gotten in trouble for being a straight white man, and it's like, all right, so, like, I'll have, like, a little emotional tip when you say it, right? But then because I love you, I stop and I say, let me think about what you say.
Right. The nuance is, I'm not attacking straight white men. I'm just attacking the idea that they're superior. Right. It doesn't mean just because you're a straight white man, you're bad.
Right.
It's just, right. And this is where the nuance comes in. Right. This is why nuance is important. Right. It doesn't mean, all all straight white men are bad. I mean, obviously, that's just fighting fire with fire. Racism, sexism, homophobia, fighting it with racism, sexism, and heterophobia. Doesn't make any sense. Right. The nuance is you just can't have a really bad imbalance. You need more of a middle ground.
Right, and it's weird because people inform each other, right? So in a lot of conversations I have with people, I'll be the guy that's like, 55% liberal, 45% conservative, and they'll be on more conservative, and then like I'll be bringing them back to like the liberal side of things. But like in the conversation with you, you feel more liberal than me, so like I'm actually becoming the more conservative person in this conversation. But then if I go talk to somebody else, my poles will flip relative to the person that I'm talking to. Right? And that's a real interchange of community. The capacity to do that is the realization that all things are the one thing, but in different motions of themselves. So it's not like a nebulous clusterfuck. Right, where there's just this one thing and everything's perfectly equal. It's like, no, but you can actually, and this is what I think is behind the gender fluidity conversation. Mm-hmm. I think that gender is a deeply important part of the human experience, right? And I think that a lot of what I see going on seems to be a perversion, but it's like there's truth in it, right? Because people could have feminine souls and masculine bodies. I think that that's very fucking real, right? Now it becomes an interesting thing because it's like, if you say to me, please call me a woman, I'll call you a woman, and I'll love calling you a woman. I'll love calling you she because I want to honor and respect you. But if you start saying, God damn it, I am a woman, and if you don't accept this, like, we're going to fucking ban you from society, it's like, now you're being fucked up.
Yeah, right? You can't fight fire with fire, right?
And it's, so this is, I mean, it's the nuance that you're discussing, right? And it's also this conversation about knowing that we are all things lets us move between these tense poles.
And then that teaches me I should just be more nuanced than just saying straight white male. I should be like, just try to find something, short and quick that I can say that doesn't just trigger somebody, then we don't have a conversation. Right. No, I'm just saying, you know what I mean? Like,
no, I mean, I think that saying straight white male is acceptable. Carl Jung says that personality and character are not synonymous, right? And the words that you choose are part of your personality. So I know you, right? And I know, like, listen, like, I was not allowed to perform in certain comedy shows because I was a straight white male. That was recent, right? Now, that's kind of a horrible experience. When it happened to me, though, I thought to myself, I'm happy to take the bullet for society in order to stabilize this, but I hope this bullshit ends soon, right? Was my thought, right? So the thing is like, if I'm a little triggered when somebody says straight white male, like it's a problem, or speaking of like, that's on me, right? What I need to be doing is like, when I hear you say straight white male, right, even if I feel a little emotional tick about it, I need to stop and listen to let him develop his point. Yeah. I understand that there are definitely elements of the patriarchy that have become incredibly corrupt. And what you said before clarified it. It's like, there's nothing wrong with being straight white male. The notion that you're superior because you're a straight white male is the actual problem, right? Yeah. Now, it's an interesting thing because when you start to get into sociological tendencies, there's no reason why a gay person can't be president. There's no reason why a black woman can't be president. There's no reason. But when you start having people getting appointed to positions where they're clearly not competent, but because of their political coloring around it, that's a fucking problem, right?
Right, the fire with fire again.
Right. Yeah. And then basically what happens is we just do humanity a disservice when we fail to see ourselves in each other, right? And like I said, it's like, for me, because I've spent so much time attempting to balance these things out within myself, I feel like I could easily go from conservative to liberal in a conversation. Yeah. So with one person I could be a little more conservative, another person I could be a little more liberal. Yeah. Right? When that's achieved, you actually just get to be a human being that's present to people. And then if you hear somebody saying something that, like, if I'm in one room, somebody says something, and I'll have a different reaction if it's another room, because the same words have totally different meanings depending on who they're coming from and the context that they're under and things like that. So it's learning how to be really present to everybody and everything we're saying. And that's why, like, when our conversation started, we were talking about the flat earth people, right? Yeah. It's like, no, I don't think the earth is flat, but I think people that just disregard these people as fucking idiots are doing themselves a disservice. Yeah. And what is so bad? Engage in the conversation. Listen to what they have to say. Stretch your mind a little bit. Argue with them. Yeah. Right? See, because this is a person that has something to offer you. Right? Yeah. And even if it's just an intellectual exercise, what are you doing when you think about the earth being flat? You're actually thinking about abstract geometry, right? That's juxtaposed against real live evidence on the matters, right? And then trying to figure out how geometric objects are going to interact at a galactic level. Why is that stupid?
Yeah.
Right? Now, I don't think the Earth is flat because it seems to violate sacred geometry to me in the way that I understand matter to come into form. And the notions of dimensionality and things like that. So I have serious problems with the theory. But I love talking about it.
Yeah, that brings me to a point I wanted to make where a lot of people, I think, would just kind of like, you know, see people playing chess in the park. Oh, they're poor. They're doing it for little money. They would just see you as crazy. But the irony is that their perspective, because they're a stupid person, their perspective is limiting them to just seeing people as crazy. Like, oh, they're nothing. I don't respect them. I don't respect their opinion. But really, the irony is that you're in the park playing chess for money because you're actually more sane than the average idiot and you have more to offer. And so that's why I appreciate my perspective, because I'm able to see that and appreciate what you have to say, because I realize that, you know, you're not just a crazy person who's, you know, whatever, like in a hard position. You're in a hard position because you don't want to go with the crazy average loser lifestyle of the average idiot person. Right. And that's why we're having a great conversation.
If you walk through the park and there's 15 people playing chess, some of them are going to be crazy, some of them are going to be brilliant, and then what should be happening is the understanding that every situation is unique and needs to be contended with. The thing is, everybody will pay lip service to saying that's true. The actual, like, boots on the ground development of that is a moral achievement, right? So to actually take a pause in every moment and say, no, let me see what they have to say. Let me see what's going on. When I'm in the park, there's a spectrum of ways that people interact with me. Some people look at me like I'm crazy. Yep. Some people look at me like I'm just trying to rip them off, which is fucking stupid. Other people treat me like I'm a genius. Other people show like the highest degrees of respect. And
it's a reflection on them, not you.
It's a reflection on them, not me. When you get the higher respect, though, that enables a more joyful interaction, right? So it's like, it's the deeper currency of what's going on is, can we actually communicate and create love together? Can we actually like come to be together and generate a higher state of being for everybody involved?
Yeah.
Or is it just going to descend into madness, right?
Yeah.
And that's, you know, and it's weird because I don't have a problem with judgment, but before you judge somebody, you better make sure you're fucking right. And if you're not sure if you're right, then you should give them the benefit of the doubt, right? I see drug dealers in the park all the time, right? And I look at them differently. But then when I met like my little elven businessman that was like, edibles, 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 I was like, I fucking love this guy and I want to be friends with him, right? Then there are other people, I'm like, get away from me with your fucking weed, you're disgusting, right?
Yeah.
And then, but it's like you're the edibles elf. Right? And like, I saw the edibles elf and was like, get your ass over your edibles elf. I don't even want any edibles, you're just cool.
All right, thanks. So basically, like, our energy's attracted because we're both amazing, smart people. Yeah.
We're in many ways, I feel like I'm the straight white version of you. And you're the elven gay version of me. Okay. And it's like, because we're both doing things outside of the social construct.
Yeah.
If you actually look what's happening, we're both learning from Washington.
Because we're smarter than the average idiot.
Right. So there's ways to sustain oneself outside of that construct.
Yeah. You got to be creative.
Yeah, and we drew and that's why we were drawn. But then it's also interesting because that's the ease of recognizing ourselves. Like, you did nothing. Like, I never touched any edibles, right? And it's like, but I just saw your energy walking past and was like, oh my god, I love him. And it wasn't like a fierce thing. It was like this really like cute, like, oh my god, I fucking love him. Like that's what it felt like, right? And it was just like, I think I told you this, like, I felt like you were like the embodiment of some elf on the astral plane, just going around sprinkling Rice Krispie treats on everybody, like here, have some joy, you fucking stupid humans. Go to the fourth dimension. It's gonna be fun.
Okay, so basically, you pinned me correctly. All right. So, thank you so much. This was very fun and informative, and we'll hopefully do it again sometime.
Anytime, baby.
Thank you so much. Thanks, guys, for listening. See ya.